Remember what I read in November. Are there any treasonous plots? Hello, I'm Pete. This is the Ponderings of Pete. I did the hand motions backwards, but it's okay. I am books. I like books. And I read mostly sci-fi and fantasy, and occasionally I read non-fiction as well. Welcome. This is my November wrap-up. Let's talk about what I read in November. Starting with the two big chunkers, the first of which is The Crippled God by Steven Erikson. This is book 10 in Malazan Book of the Fallen. I finally finished the series, and I'm doing a reread next year at some point, or starting it at least, because there's a lot in this series. There's a lot of things going on. There's so many characters, so many plots, so many just stuff. So buckle up if you're going to get into this series. I really liked it. I think the end was fitting. Hopefully soon I might do a Malazan ranking. I definitely did a spoilery review, thoughts, predictions, response video. It's actually going to be right here, not right there. Check that out if you want to talk about that. Highly recommend Malazan Book of the Fallen. I wouldn't say it's for everybody because it is so big and complex and there's a lot going on, and even now after reading all 10 books I don't necessarily understand everything that went on, which is why I'm going to reread it. So it is definitely a long book series, very ripe for rereads. I also would like to do a Malazan recommendation video soon. We'll see. So that was fun. The other big chunker that I read last month was Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is my second time reading this book, reading Eye of the World. I never have completed the Wheel of Time. I got to, I think, book 4 before I stopped in the middle of book 4 and then never got back to it. So I'm starting over again. I'm going to read the first 2 books this year and then get on to some of the other books slowly next year, which will be interesting. But on a read, I really liked it. I definitely read it actually in the context of just how is this similar to Lord of the Rings? Because I didn't necessarily pick up on those the first time I read it because I wasn't thinking about that. But afterwards I was like, okay, there's a few things that are similar. And it was actually kind of enjoyable to pick out the things like, oh, that's where that's similar. And oh, Shadar Morgoth is basically Moria and some other stuff. I really liked that. That was cool. On its own, I think it's setting up for a lot of things. But it felt like could be its own standalone story, but with just a lot of threads left hanging. And I think I could see why that there are going to be differences in the TV show, just because the pacing is kind of weird and some other things. So I'm looking forward to continuing on with this series and eventually finishing it probably in 2023. We will see. Next up, real easy one, Fangs of Freelance by Drew Hay. This is book 4. Yeah, book 4 in the Fred the Vampire Accountant series. And yeah, it's just going strong. Again, I think the last one was definitely a little bit more cohesive in terms of all the little chapters kind of making up one story, versus this one kind of went a little bit farther back into the 4 or 5 individual short stories formula that Drew Hayes has developed with this series. They're all vaguely connected per usual, but it's back to doing more short stories. This is a comfort read for me. I kind of try to turn off parts of my brain when I read it because there are some holes in it, but I think it's really cool. I like seeing the world building of okay, there's all these different supernatural entities, and there's mages, and there's werewolves, and there's vampires, and there's were-ponies. It's cool. Draconians that were mentioned once. There's a lot of interesting stuff. I do think there were some flaws here. I feel like Drew restates a lot of things every book. And that kind of adds to the page count in a bad way. Sometimes it's just he starts saying things over and over again. I'm like, okay, look, I've heard this 3 times already. I remember this in this book. I'm not reading this for the first time. And that is kind of frustrating with him giving everybody's backstory every time we introduce them in a new book. But, it is a comfort read, and that's part I'm just kind of shoving to it's fine. I do really like this series. Still kind of hilarious as an accountant. It's a vampire. So I'm liking it. Next up, surprise! This one didn't actually appear on my TBR. It just happened. Purple and Black by KJ Parker. The Library of Allenxandria was raving about this book on his Discord, and I've been wanting to get into some KJ Parker. If you've seen my December wrap or December TBR, I am going to get to The Folding Knife really soon. I think that's probably the next book I'm picking up after I've finished the Dune book that I'm on. But Purple and Black, this was delightful. I ordered it. It came within a few days, and then I read it in 2 hours because this is a short story. This is a novella. And this is, I don't remember the word for it, but basically it's a bunch of letters back and forth between two essentially college buddies that one of them is now emperor. But originally when they were in college, they're like, you're never going to become emperor because you're like 13 or 14th in line. And then because of the cutthroat nature of this empire, all of a sudden, boom, he's emperor. It was delightful. He put his college buddy in charge of some outpost up north. And it really, through the letters, you get a great, interesting sense of the politics and the relationship between the two men. You get the established relationship from college, and then they tell tales about college, and then compare it to modern, to the day that is. And it's just really good and really got my taste buds going for more KJ Parker, because I've been hearing mostly from Alan and a few others that are reading it with him, just like that KJ Parker is so good. So he might be a new favorite author. Who knows? We'll see after I read The Folding Knife. I'm excited. Definitely, if you're not sure about KJ Parker, or you have a lot on your plate, KJ Parker has a lot of novellas, most of which are available on Kindle. That really easy to get. I personally did get a physical copy because I am a weird physical copy purist person that I really like physical copies. So it's cool. Check it out. Next up, I'm technically still reading this one, but because I just mentioned it, I will say it again. I'll talk about it. Children of Dune by Frank Herbert. So far, this is my favorite Dune novel yet, because it's very philosophical, specifically about subjects that have been just pinging around my mind for the last few months, last year or so, because of books I've read, because of things I've just been thinking about. So because of 1984, Gulag, Archipelago, and a few other things that I've been thinking about. All the craziness in 2020 with the election, the American election. Governance has been on my mind a lot. And Children of Dune has a lot to say about that. Of course, it continues on with Frank Herbert's theme of anti-imperialism. That basically, hey, just because you can do this thing, you shouldn't necessarily take over these people because it's a bad thing. It definitely shows the descent of Fremen culture, and we got a piece of that in Messiah. We got more in Children of Dune. I think we're probably going to see more in God Emperor Dune. But it also talks about why people musing about Paul and his son just talking, and different characters just musing about why we govern, and what are the effects of the people that we have on the people around us when we govern. So combine that with some other books, and it's just there's a lot going on in my mind about this. So it's great. Next up, Salute the Dark by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the first of two that on this list for their Adrian Tchaikovsky. Book 4, Shadows of the Yap. This kind of concludes an arc in the 10-book series. Alan was going to sort of end the read-along, but he's actually going to continue the read-along starting in January. We're taking a month off, but then we're going to get right back on, I believe, Scarab Path, yes, is the next one. I think this was a fitting end for the arc, and he definitely took care of a lot of issues going forward. So some of the issues that we had with the series, that I've had with the series, I think some of it at least is going to be fixed because of just what he did with the series. So I appreciated that. It's going to be really interesting to see how this goes forward. Definitely not my favorite of the bunch. I would say that the first two are kind of my favorites for different reasons. The second so far in the series. The second one definitely because of the sieges is so amazing. And the first one just because it was probably the most well put together of all the books. What else? Let's do more Adrian Tchaikovsky with Children of Time. Children of Time is a book about spiders and evolutionary spiders. Okay, humans mess around, give a virus to spiders on a different planet, and humans are also struggling to survive because of environmentalism. Essentially, there is a thousands of year long storyline with different spiders and people just interacting and growing up, essentially. One is a civilization, one is people. This was really interesting to read. I really liked how Adrian really delved into the spider culture and really delved into, how spiders would think differently than humans, and just how the basis for a lot of things, a lot of engineering and such, would be completely different from humans due to the fact that, like, hey, okay, spiders have to think in 3 dimensions because that's how they build their webs and stuff like that. I thought that was a really interesting exploration. So I was interested in this. Some of the premise was okay, but I liked it. The last one they actually finished this month was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And by that, I mean I finished part 2, which was the goal. Really, really loving this book. So awesome of a book. I'm loving the writing style. I'm loving the plot twists that are happening. I'm really loving the characterization as well, which is so unique. And just this is a soft magic system. And Susanna Clarke really plays into the softness of the magic system and leaves you with a sense of wonder over the history, over the things that they're doing. It's really, really amazing and unique what she's done with this book, and it's really beautiful. And I really like it. And the final one that I have been reading, I didn't really touch Gulag Archipelago, but I have been reading 1984. I'm going to give you a little bit of that. I think this definitely is a book about control, governmental control specifically, and censorship. And I was reading something online the other day about censorship, just looking into a certain author and how she had done some graduate level research on censorship and written some stuff about it that I wasn't able to read because it was probably behind a paywall. I'd have to look into that. But that a lot of censorship throughout history is actually not of the type that's described in 1984. 1984 is definitely heavy governmental censorship, which we really haven't seen that much of, other than maybe like Russia, USSR, China today. A lot of the censorship tends to be a little bit more decentralized, whether it is a lot of social media platforms today that are heavily censoring more things, whether it is, conservative moms really going for banning certain books at schools. It's an interesting thought process to be like, I know I definitely disagree with government censorship because my whole thing is I really don't like concentrations of power. People should be able to live their lives how they want without a higher human power telling them what they should do, specifically the government, or other things like big corporations dictating what they can do indirectly. I definitely disagree with like a lot of like high level censorship, but like on a more local level, it's like, okay, parents have a right to censor what their kids read. I mean, that is up to the decisions of the parents. I have opinions about like what you should censor, obviously, because I have opinions about what I would want my kids to read. But it's still whatever parent's choice about what they want to expose their kids to and how they want to raise their kids. So it's kind of like on a public level, I'm just like, no. But on an individual level, I'm like, you do you. So that's just an interesting thought process to go through. Just to explore those things and explore and just be horrified what's in 1984. But I'm really loving it. That's kind of what I read in November. It's not really it is what I read in November. Have you read any of these books? What do you think? What are you reading? What did you read in November that you really liked? Let me know down in the comments below. Go ahead and like, subscribe, all that jazz. Bell notification. And remember that you're awesome and get some sleep because sleep is really important. Bye.